Hi, welcome back. Well, I'm not at the allotment, as you might be able to tell. I'm at home. This week's been a bit of a washout. The weather's been, well, wet. and I had all intentions of being at the allotment most of this week, but life has had alternative plans. The kids have gone back to school this week, and I've just had a lot of catching up to do with different things. But I am hoping to get there tomorrow and get some work done because there's so much weeding still needs to be done. And I really want to get my broad beans sown, and I've got onion sets to plant, and I've got garlic plant as well. But I haven't received all of the garlic that I've ordered through the post yet, so hopefully in the next week or so I'll be able to get that in the ground. So I thought I would do a video from home and show you the home garden. The only thing is today it's wet and windy, and I've taken some video and it's just, you can't hear a word I'm saying. And the garden is not looking its best at the moment. So I thought I would do a little bit of history about how I became so interested in gardening and when I started, and a little bit about the garden and how it's developed. So we moved to this house in 2017, in October of 2017, and it's my first house with a garden. I grew up in my parents' house with a garden. We always had a really nice garden, but I hadn't had a garden before myself. I had a very small yard when I was in my early 20s, but I wasn't interested back then. But I'd lived in a house, in a terraced house, small terraced house with no garden, front doorstep, that's all I had. And we lived there 6 years, and I just craved outdoor space at that time. And so I was really, really glad to move here and to get a garden. The garden is a pretty standard size garden for a semi-detached house. It's probably on the smaller side. It's 56 square metres. It's 8 by 9 metres at its biggest point, and the kitchen sticks out into it, so it's a little bit smaller than it would be without that. We are 515 feet above sea level, and we are south by southwesterly facing. We get an awful lot of wind. We're very exposed. To the back of the garden is a field, and so we are very exposed. The nearest thing to us is on a level with us is a hill about 8 miles away as the crow flies. So yes, we are very exposed. So we get very windy conditions out there, which some things do really struggle with. But we also have, it's quite mild in a sense. We do get frost and we do get snow. We get snow usually quicker than other people around here because we're so high up. But, or comparatively higher, should we say, rather than so high. I mean, 515 feet above sea level is not, it's not that high really compared to some. But it's, we are able to overwinter dahlias in the ground here. So, but I think that's as much to do with the free draining soil that we've got. So we're lucky in that respect. So yes, so we moved here in October of 2017, and I was 8 months pregnant. Now, getting pregnant hadn't been easy. It was a 6-year journey, if you want to call it that, and we had several losses along the way, and so I was a high risk pregnancy. And we had our daughter in the November, and we were looking forward to getting started in the garden the following spring. But when my daughter was 4 months old, we found out that we were 4 weeks pregnant, or I was 4 weeks pregnant. And we also found out around that time that my husband needed spinal surgery. So when I was 6 months pregnant and we had a 9-month-old baby, my husband had spinal surgery and was off work for 12 weeks. So, and my husband's really the muscle in this garden. He's, as I mentioned in my last video, he's just one of those people who's very good at DIY. He's very practical. He can just do stuff, When we were renovating this house, the garden was really done by him and my parents. I didn't have any contribution really, except pointing at them and pointing at things and telling them what to do. So I designed the layout of the garden. I wasn't really expecting to get into gardening in the way that I did. I more wanted to have a garden, and I was interested in gardening. I watched Gardener's World. I've been watching it since I was a kid, watching Jeff Hamilton, and but I think for a long time it was escapism. It was me watching gardens, and I like to go visit gardens and things like that. So I didn't expect to get into gardening in the way that I did. And when my youngest was born, fast forward, they shared the same due date, the girls, exactly a year apart. My youngest came a little bit earlier in the year than my oldest. And then in the spring next year, we were looking forward to gardening again, but at the end of January, my youngest started having seizures, and she was diagnosed with epilepsy, which is inherited from me. And she was very ill for the next 8 months, right up until her first birthday. 2 weeks before her first birthday was her last seizure. And thankfully, she hasn't had one since, and she's just turned 5. So that was 2019, and that year was a bit of a blur, really. And obviously gardening we kept the garden tidy and we did it, but I wasn't interested in it. You know, it was just something, it was a chore, really, if anything, at that time. And then things started to go okay. And then at the beginning of 2020, we all know what happened then. And a friend of mine said to me that a local nursery was delivering in our area, and that is what started it. I started ordering from this nursery, and they were delivering every other week, and I just really got into it. And my husband would go off for his hour of exercise. He'd take the kids in the double buggy, and I'd stay at home and garden. And honestly, I cannot tell you how grateful I am that we lived here and had that space during lockdowns, because, wow, I mean, we all know how precious outdoor space can be, and I'm really, really grateful for it. I'm also really glad we had the lovely weather we did. And yeah, I just got into gardening from there, and it's just grown and grown. And over the years, it became quite apparent that my youngest is autistic. She's not diagnosed yet, but she's on the pathway, and she's significantly developmentally delayed. She's pre-verbal, so she can't speak conversationally, but she can say things, that she can count to 10 and back and things like that. And she is very, very delayed. And I have become her carer. Instead of going back to work, I've ended up staying and being a stay-at-home mum and a carer for her. And gardening has been that thing that I have for me. You know, my life's changed massively. We have, our life has changed massively, and we basically had home, and my husband had work, and that was all we had. And the garden has given me something that's mine. It's lovely that I get to share it with my family, because it is theirs as well, but it's something for me that I have. And I started sharing it on social media, sharing what I was doing, and I really enjoyed being able to communicate with people who shared my passion, my new passion. My parents do, but there's only so much you can witter on about dahlias to your mum and dad, you know. So, yes, and I am still very much an amateur, but I have been growing veg now in the garden. This has been my fourth year growing veg in the garden. We made some changes to make it easier to grow veg. We built some planters. I say we, I mean Mark, my husband. He built 10 planters out of pallet collars this year, and we filled them. They were quite cheap to build, although we did have to go all the way to Hull on the east coast of England to collect them, and he did end up taking 2 trips. I say we, I had no part in that. I ordered them, but I had no part in picking them up. And a couple of weeks later, my dad decided that the allotment that we'd sort of shared for a couple of years, he decided he didn't want to do it anymore, and he was passing it over to me. So that's when I got the allotment. Now, we probably wouldn't have built the planters had we have known this, but we've got them there now, and I'm not sure what I'm going to plant in them next year, but something. So I'm going to show you some old footage and photographs of the garden from the beginning, 6 years ago, right through to now-ish. And this is what we started with. This is our back garden. It was gravel over paving over tarmac, and my parents and Mark dug up the tarmac around where we were having the lawn and the beds, left it down under these patio areas. My parents were there all the time doing this. It's just, I haven't got any photos of them because they're both very camera shy. We then returfed the grass because the seed didn't take very well, but that didn't take either. I've dug down recently and I think there's a patio under here that we missed, a really, really deep down. So yeah, those daffodils were planted by my mum, as were all the plant flowers you just saw. She was very proud of those. My first greenhouse, my flimsy, I loved that thing. And then at the beginning of last year when I turned 40, Mark bought me this Palram Canopia polycarbonate greenhouse, and I absolutely love it. It's withstood so many storms since, it's just fantastic. Then I realised I didn't have enough growing space, so Mark is here seen cutting out the turf to create new beds, just so that we can grow. And also by the sleeper, the turf never, the grass never really grew very well. We then put trellis around the edges so that we had something to grow up, and added in arches so that I could grow my runner beans up there. Painted them. There's some storage boxes Mark had made for me. Painted them and turned them into a herb planter, which I love. 2 flimsy benches we had. He turned those into a planter. There's my greenhouse now. And this is how we grew veg last year. So we've got beans, all different kinds. We've got dwarf beans, runner beans, climbing beans. Got courgettes, we've got squash in buckets there. That's my little veg patch in buckets. And it did really well. We got a really good harvest that year. And it was really enjoyable growing so much food in such a small space. I say such a small space. Obviously there's smaller gardens, but I've always had to leave enough space for my young children to play as well. So you could grow a lot more food in my garden. It's a good sized garden, but if you've got children or animals and you want to leave space for them as well, then you can still grow a good amount of space, a good amount of food vertically and in pots. And these are just some of the harvests that I had that year, and they're my beans for drying, which I was very proud of. And of course, my first love in the garden is still and always will be flowers. So earlier this year, we got pallet collars. We got 40 pallet collars, and Mark turned them into 10 planters. They're absolutely huge, these planters. They're about 1 metre long by about 40 centimetres or 60 centimetres wide, depending on where they go, because they were all made to fit certain areas, and they're 40 centimetres deep. I've got roses growing in them, other perennials. We grew cucumbers and lettuces, tomatoes, courgettes, herbs, blueberries with ericaceous compost in one of them. They've done really, really well this year, and others have got annuals in, just for display, because about 2 weeks after we got them, as I said, we got the allotment, so we didn't need them for food as much as we thought we would. But yeah, and here we got some more flowers because, like I said, they make me very happy. So this year our plans are to replace these arches with timber arches. We've seen the ones we want. We know we're going to get them soon and get them in the ground. And that corner space that we've grown tomatoes in this year, we're going to wood chip that, and we're going to turn it into a little seating area. And I've already got a couple of jasmines that we're going to grow up the trellis and the arch, and I'm looking for other climbing plants to grow up as well. So if you've got any suggestions for wind tolerant, sun loving climbers that aren't full of thorns, because I'd love roses, but it's a bit too close to the kids, that's the area there. You can let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. story of the garden. And now, yeah, now I have an allotment, and I'm really, really looking forward to the new season. I've been doing lots of planning, and in the coming days I'm probably going to film a video showing you what we're going to be sowing in the new year and what we're going to be growing on the allotment in our first full year as plot holders. So once again, thank you to everybody who has liked, subscribed, watched, shared, commented. It's all very much appreciated. And if you are new here and if you haven't yet subscribed, please consider doing so. And I will be back with you all very soon.